What is life? It's the middle thing between birth and death, right? Between the middle and end. What if you're wrong about that?
But now I'm not so sure I believe in beginnings and endings.
In the film Arrival, directed by Denis Villeneuve, based on the Ted Chiang short science fiction story, The Story of Your Life, our curiosity thrusts us into some serious questions about how we perceive life, what causes us to perceive it the way that we do, and what do we do about it. The core concepts underlying the story that Arrival so masterfully brings to the cinematic form are linguistic relativity, time perception, and determinism. The movie centers around Dr. Louise Banks, played by Amy Adams, who is one of the best linguists in the world. About halfway through the movie, she starts having visions, and the term Sapir-Whorf Hypothesis is mentioned by one of her colleagues. This theory is also referred to as linguistic relativity. This concept is a real-world hypothesis that is deeply debated to this day. It was started by Edward Sapir and Benjamin Lee Whorf in studying cognitive differences between peoples exposed to different languages. A lot of examples pop up between spatial recognition between large groups of separated humans. A commonly cited example is the Mayans' description of objects are based on material rather than the English use of relative size. Also, some Australian Aboriginal tribes describe space as absolute versus the relative description used by English or Latin-based speakers. The deeper held belief that language determines cognition has been heavily refuted, but there are many studies backing up the significant amount of influence language holds on our perception. As the world becomes more and more connected, our perceptions will continue to merge, and this theory will become harder and harder to test. A huge part of the movie revolves around trying to, and oftentimes failing, to communicate with the alien species referred to as the heptapods. The heptapods use vastly different languages for speaking and writing. Their written language is a circular form without a beginning or end. We can imagine a species with a vastly different vantage point in the universe and little to no similarities in the way it evolved would have a massively different perception on the universe compared to two separate human languages. Throughout the film, Louise starts to understand the language more and more, until ultimately,
are you dreaming in their language?
She experiences confusing flashbacks more and more frequently as she starts understanding the language more. In this way, the movie is showing us an extreme case of linguistic relativity where she starts to perceive time as the heptapods do. Wait, isn't time constant? Although there's many discussions about time in relation to physics and other scientific realms, it's clear that the way that we perceive time is not absolute and highly flawed as measurement. Many scientists are subscribing to the notion that time does not exist as a fourth dimension, as often mentioned in many movies. Instead, time should be considered the numerical order of material change. The way the material world acts is a lot different than the way we perceive it. Our perception is less measurable and unreliable when compared to more empirical tests. An example of this can be observed with the use of depressants and stimulants. The level of dopamine or similar neurotransmitter activities in the brain may be responsible for the overestimation of time humans feel on stimulants, like caffeine, and the underestimation of time on depressants, like alcohol. To take this a step further, imagine that time does not exist outside of your brain.
In this universe, we process time linearly, forward. But outside of our space-time, from what would be a fourth dimensional perspective, time wouldn't exist.
That's the perception the heptapods in Arrival live in. Through learning their language, which is timeless in form, Louise slowly starts to perceive her whole life as timeless. This leads to one very huge question. If you knew how your life was going to happen, would you change it? This question dives into the themes of determinism and the existence of free will. Do we really have control over the choices we make, or are they predetermined by an incredibly complex series of events prior to making that choice? Arrival seems to point towards a less deterministic outcome. Although Louise chooses not to change the natural course of her life, it is portrayed very much as a choice that she decides to make. I won't spoil everything, but the choice she's making is a very, very hard choice specifically for her. It's where a lot of the emotional tension in the movie comes in. It dives into some deeper existential philosophies, which are much better explained in these videos that are linked on the page and also down in the description. What do you think? If you knew how everything in your life was going to turn out, would you do things differently? Let me know in the comments below and give this video a thumbs up if you want to see more like it. Thanks for watching, and until next time, this was Craig with Sideline Pictures.